We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
Go on without me. Just go.
A good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Because I wouldn't give you 2 cents for all your fancy rules if behind them they didn't have a little bit of plain, ordinary, everyday kindness.
Life, finds a way.
Welcome to Silver Screen Biases. Each week we pick a movie off of IMDb's Top 250 and dig into it. We're examining truth claims in critically acclaimed movies while also examining our own biases. I'm Nelson.
This is Jeff.
And this week,
Rashomon.
This episode is brought to you by our community on Patreon. They make this show happen and you can help. Links to our Patreon and merchandise are in the show notes. Now back to the show.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
It's good to have you back.
It's been a whole 24 hours.
Has been.
We recorded last night our Patreon-only, subscriber-only show, Off 250.
Yep.
Available now, yeah. And that was A Few Good Men.
A couple of them.
If you're not currently subscribed to our Patreon, it's linked below. And by joining, you can listen to our monthly Off 250 show as well as vote on what movies we cover and provide feedback ahead of our recordings for these shows.
Well, yeah, that about does it. Yeah, that's all I had to say.
Have a great week.
Yeah. Hey, we did it, man. We had new category.
Oh.
Well, new film genre.
Oh.
Sort of. It wasn't as samurai-y as I wanted it to be.
Okay.
But we did watch a Japanese live action film for this episode. Rashomon.
1950, Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah. Have you watched any? Or is this your first Akira experience?
This is. I've been
curious since it doesn't work well.
Keep trying.
Experience the sour.
It is my first Akira Kurosawa film. I've been meaning to watch some of his films for a long time. He is a legend in filmmaking.
Well, he's a legend in real life too now, right? Is he dead? I'm looking. Was that insensitive?
A little. He hasn't made a movie since the 80s, I believe.
No one really has. Yeah, he died in 98. 88 years old.
Yeah, and we'll be seeing more from him. Seven Samurai, High and Low, Ikiru, Ran, Yojimbo, and then there's...
Yes?
Yo, Jimbo.
Yeah, what's up?
So those are currently on the top 250. And then Sanjuro. Some of these have... I'm going to see if they have English titles. No. Tsubakai Sanjuro. So the English title
That's not English?
Harder to pronounce. And then The Hidden Fortress, Dursu Uzala, and Throne of Blood have been in the top 250, no longer are. And these are, like I said, he's a legend in Japanese
I have
film.
a story for you about a Throne of Blood. It actually ends with me getting a colonoscopy.
And begins with a Chipotle burrito.
Yeah, watch out for their hot sauce. Oh, man.
Ring of Fire.
Woohoo! All right, I'm done, guys. Sorry about that. This movie, I didn't know what to expect. Like, I didn't know if it was going to be a straight up kung fu movie, which this was not.
No.
It had some sort of samurai elements, but like that wasn't there was a samurai in the movie.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the majority of the story, nor did he have much of the screen time in the whole hour and a half of the film. But
yeah.
So I didn't know what to expect. And not that every Japanese film is a samurai, but for some reason I was correlating this director with samurai films. So that was my only,
Oh, this was not what I was expecting at all either, yeah.
But what'd you take? What was your first reaction, first thoughts?
I like it. Like it a lot. Wasn't it anything that I was expecting?
Did you know anything about it going in?
Nope, not a thing.
So what were you expecting the same thing, like samurai fighting type of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I watched enough kung fu movies and samurai movies that I was expecting that.
Yeah.
But
Jack
I also
Black
knew,
did not voice any characters in this movie.
Yeah. And there wasn't a Tom Cruise-like character to come and show them how to actually be a samurai.
Right. No, I didn't see any pandas.
And so yeah, I was surprised how different it was from what I was expecting, primarily. But also I know that Akira Kurosawa was a huge influence on George Lucas. So I was watching to see what kind of things in this movie like remind me of Star Wars.
Yeah.
I do have something. We'll come to that later. But for the most part, I'd say that this movie, it's hard to say that this movie influenced George Lucas. This one specifically.
Well, this one could have. So if I was asked the question, how do you think this movie could have influenced Star Wars, and we had to come up with an answer, for me, I think it would have been part of the story plot.
Okay.
This story, obviously, this is probably, I think, this is the biggest thing I pulled away from it was this movie talks about, which we actually just talked about in A Few Good Men, talks about the errancy in eyewitness testimony.
Mm-hmm.
And, so in Star Wars, there are some moments where you could be convinced that the bad guys are doing something for the right reasons.
Well,
It's like, so there could be some sort of story. Like, if I had to answer that question and give an answer,
No,
it could be part of the story of like
that's terrific.
changing
And-
the perspective of what you see Palpatine, what you see Vader's
Yeah.
goals through, like
Yeah. No, you're right. That's all terrific.
pride and stuff like that.
But let's let that be a sizzle for later in the episode.
Like Applebee's.
Like Applebee's. And let's talk about some of the stats. Actually, what were your first impressions?
I liked it. I was whelmed.
Okay.
I was whelmed. It's not. It didn't finish, and I was like, oh man, it was just. I was like, okay, cool. It's a reinterpretation of a concept I've seen done other times.
Okay.
This idea of a story being played out multiple times, and you're seeing it from different angles and stuff like.
Yeah.
The most recent one that came to my mind was Vantage Point.
Okay.
Similar but also different. Like these people see a crime take place, and then you're watching the crime play out over and over again from different vantage points.
Right.
And just seeing how the story changes.
And
how
what
the
year was that
evidence-
movie?
Let me look that up. It was it was after this one.
Okay.
2008. Let me give you just a little bit more background of this film. 2008. Dennis Quaid, Forrest Whitaker, Matthew Fox from the Lost series.
Is that his full name?
Matthew Fox from the Lost series, yeah.
Yeah.
The attempted assassination of the American president is told and retold from several different perspectives.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so and I've seen that. It's been a while since I've seen it. I can't tell you the details, but
Right.
like that concept was cool then, and like it was cool to see it maybe for the first time done
I think this might be the first time.
of that type of storytelling. So no, I appreciate it. It's not one that I would probably need to watch again.
Sure.
But I enjoyed this. It was fun. I thought some of the voice acting for the American
Yeah, because we watched the
was a
Criterion
little-
Collection version,
was
which
a-
has Asian accent Asian accent speaking English voice acting.
and some of it comes across a little aggressive.
Yeah.
But it was still enjoyable. It didn't feel like I was watching like those stereotypical like Godzilla movies where like it was like way off. Like the mouths keep moving and the words stop, or like
Yeah.
it wasn't that off.
I think that's
like,
a
there
stereotype
were-
more of Kung Fu, but yeah.
Correct, yeah. But I just I did overall I enjoyed this film, but it's not one I'm gonna rant and rave about. But we'll get it. But some good things to talk about today. It came out in 1950. It runs approximately an hour and 28 minutes. Directed by the one and only Akira Kurosawa. This movie is not rated, so tough luck. Came out in 1950. We have not done any movies that have released either in 1949, 1950, or 1951. So at least for this trio of years,
Yeah.
this is the first time we've kind of
What's
been
the
in
closest in year?
54 or 47.
Okay.
I don't have those off the top of my head, but I know
Yeah,
we've done those. Do you know if this story was written or based off of any sort of written previous existing story?
Yes, and I'm gonna butcher this name, so for the diehard fans out there, I apologize. This is based on Ryunosuke Agutugawa's short story In a Grove, with the title and framing story being based on Rashomon, another story also by the same author. I read the synopses of these two short stories. In a Grove, the synopsis is identical to what actually happens in this movie. However, in a Grove, it all takes place at the trial thing.
Which is the last location we see.
No, that's the location that we see repeatedly, where it's just like that one camera shot
Yeah.
with the woodcutter and the
wall in the
priest in the
back?
background.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Whereas Rashomon is a city and a specifically a gate to that city where people would leave people to die. They just abandoned corpses there. And
They mentioned that in the film.
yes. And that's where the narrators in the story are in the movie. They're at that gate. And that short story explores a different concept entirely, which is we'll come back to later. Make sure to ask me about that because and this movie does both of them. This movie really takes both short stories, mashes them together in a really incredible way,
Clever way.
that I think handles it very, very well.
I want to pause here. So, watched a couple different videos on topics that kept coming up when I was doing some research for this film, and there is a term out now called the Rashomon effect. And we'll get into it deeper when we do stats. But as we continue, I want to have this in the mind for the listeners. There's a definition. The definition of the Rashomon effect is the instance when the same event is described in significantly different, often contradictory ways by different people who were involved.
That's right.
So you see this play out in real life and then also in storytelling. But this movie created this term
Yes.
of storytelling or
Phenomena.
or lack of authenticity when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that more. Let's get through these stats
Right.
first.
Yep. So
Because
notable.
otherwise I'll spend an hour on that.
Yeah, notable cast. I didn't recognize a single one. So do you have any stats on cast members?
Yeah. So the bandit Tojimaro, that is Toshiro Mifune. We're going to see him again in High and Low, Yojimbo, and Seven Samurai.
Yeah, what's up?
Takashi Shimura, which was the woodcutter, he gave the first testimony. We'll see him as well in High and Low, Yojimbo, Seven Samurai, and Ikiru. I've also been watching through the old Godzilla movies, and I recognized him. He's in Godzilla, Godzilla Raids Again, The Mysterians, Mothra, Gorath, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and Godzilla vs. Destroyer.
Wow.
However, in like half of these, he's playing different people. Like it's not MCU, right? There's not a lot
so
of
each
content.
movie stands alone on their own.
Yeah, so like Godzilla and Godzilla Raids Again and Godzilla vs. Destroyer, he plays the same character.
Okay.
But in all the other ones,
Mothra, all those things are standalone films.
yeah, but Godzilla fights Mothra, right? So then Mothra becomes part of the Godzilla franchise. But he was already in Mothra playing a different character. So like is
Godzilla the most movied character?
he might be.
Like is that character
It's 30-some movies.
with the most films, American and non,
Might be.
and adjacent films, like the King Kong movies would also
which
be
tie into the
in that
franchise.
category.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's in that. Those,
I don't
know. What's the word for them?
Universe?
No, the name for those type of monsters.
Kaiju.
Kaijus, yeah, kaiju stories.
Yeah. It very well could be.
That's fascinating.
And then we also have Minoru Chiaki. That's the priest who gave the second testimony. We're going to see him again in High and Low, Seven Samurai, Ikiru, and he's in Godzilla Raids Again. Then there's Kichijiro Ueda. We'll see him in Seven Samurai. Noriko Honma, Yojimbo, Seven
What's
Samurai, Ikiru. Also Godzilla, Ebirah, Horror of the Deep, and Baron. Daisuke Kato, Yojimbo, Seven Samurai, Ikiru. And then Shinobu Hashimoto, who wrote the screenplay, also wrote the screenplay.
Hashimoto. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
He wrote the
Hashimoto.
screenplay. He also wrote the screenplay for Seven Samurai and Ikiru. So it seems like Akira Kurosawa had kind of like a group that he liked to work with a lot and used them pretty regularly.
Okay, it's a crossover name. There's a autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's disease, but it was named after a doctor, Dr. Hakiru Hashimoto, a surgeon in 1912.
Different
So
Hashimoto.
I knew that name. I was like, I've heard that.
So
name before.
I believe, I know that some Asian cultures, and I believe Japan's the same, Japanese culture's the same, Hashimoto is his first name.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay. I'm not going to argue it. Not that point. I'm not going to argue that point, Nelson. 8.2 out of 10 on the IMDb, currently stands at 157 on the top 250. Does this movie have history on the IMDb top 250?
Yeah, in 1996, when the top 250 began, it debuted at 100. It peaked at 43 in May 2005, dropped 10 points in 2022 when they updated the algorithm, but for the most part has been steadily.
But it's always been on the top 250.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the highest rated Akira movie?
Let's take a look.
currently standing, I guess.
I don't know about currently standing, but Seven Samurai's highest was 4.
Oh.
And it's the only one that's been single digits.
Wow. That's fascinating.
It's currently ranked 22.
Okay, so Seven Samurai is higher than...
I think Seventh Samurai's... Let's just check real quick. High and low is 86. Ikaru is 99. Ran is 143.
Is that the Forrest Gump biopic?
No, it's about Flight of Seagulls.
Huh.
And then 152 for Yojimbo. So yeah,
What's up?
Seven Samurai is by far the highest.
Okay, cool. We should do that one sometime.
We will.
98% on the tomato meter.
Mhm.
93% audience. Did this movie have a budget?
Yeah, estimated 140,000, which is 1.7 million today.
Whoa. Cheap, smallest budget we've probably seen.
I think might be.
Holy cow. It makes sense. I mean, the one, when they're under the dilapidated...
Rashomon. When they're in Rashomon.
That set's pretty big. Like, that was a big, like, when they zoom out, like, it's a big scaled set. But everything else is, it's woods. It's just a long brick wall.
Yeah.
Like, the set is very basic. And and maybe some of these actors had some pretty renowned budgets before that. Like, maybe some of these guys came in, but that's cheap.
Yeah.
For a movie that's always been on the top 250?
Yeah.
Holy cow. That's fascinating.
And name drop. Did you notice one? So the movie opens up with a sign that says Rashomon. And they do mention that they are at the Rashomon gate.
Okay.
So I think we give it to them.
Okay. Because even though we watched the dubbed, it probably is in
I would imagine, yeah.
The original dialogue as well, yeah. Any Peanut Gallery 250 notes?
No comments. However, it's a standstill. Half of the people voting would put it in the top 250. The other half would not. I'd wager that the other half haven't seen it.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, wrap up questions. Wait, hold on. So, Rashomon.
Yeah.
I got one big thing. Like
the Rashomon effect.
The Rashomon effect. Like, but as the story played out and they kept retelling, like it kept replaying this idea.
Yeah.
It made me think about different ideas. So the first thing I thought about, and this is just where I want to launch from, I am a Bible believing Christian.
Yes, you are.
I need to be more in the Bible probably than I am currently, but like
as all Bible believing Christians,
I stand on it on the BIBLE.
I find opening it and reading it is more beneficial than standing on it.
Well, that makes sense actually. But you get a lot of weird looks from neighbors. But anyways, the Bible is especially the Old Testament, is a collection of stories that most of them, if not all of them, were passed down by mouth.
Yeah.
Generation to generation.
Oral tradition.
Oral tradition, yes. And I'm not questioning my faith. Like I am fully confident that the Scripture is the inerrant Word of God, and everything within it is valuable, and it is a direct letter to me and the rest of humanity for living and breathing and dying and, giving life and stuff. But at the same time, it did put in a little bit of like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be hard for stories to get skewed, perspectives to get shifted. And then you throw in something that's been translated over generations. I'm like, I don't know how to refute that argument. Like, one perspective says, like, they did it so often, oral tradition was done so often that, like, the stories didn't change. But then we're talking about stories, whether in the 1950s, 1940s, or even modern day, where, like we talked in the last, A Few Good Men, talking about how, like, eyewitness accounts are most of the time not accurate. Like, so how can we believe oral tradition and trust that there was never been flaws in that, specifically for the Bible, but modern day, we can't trust eyewitness accounts?
Yeah, I think
like it's just again, I trust the Bible. It's not me having a crisis of faith, but like
it's a great point.
How are we supposed to believe one but think the other one's is fallible?
Sure. I think.
What's your thoughts?
I think that it's a category error.
How? Okay. How so?
I think eyewitness testimony and oral tradition need to be divided into two categories.
Okay.
So, for example, how many phone numbers do you know by memory today? Maybe 2?
Hold on. Does 911 count?
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
4.
How many did you know when you were in middle school? Probably half a dozen easy.
It it probably been three or four different ones. My mom's work number, my home phone, and 911. So 3.
Maybe it's because of the size of your town, but like where I grew up, I knew my parents' number, I knew my dad's work number, I knew the.
Well, my dad couldn't answer phones at work.
Okay.
So that was like, it's not that they didn't. It was like he was in a factory and
I
they
also
didn't take
knew,
calls. So
the pizza joint's number, I knew my best friend's number.
You knew the pizza number?
310-3030 Greco, 310-3030, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, if it's a poem. Yeah.
But, well, that's part of the thing, too, is like they made you remember the phone numbers. We don't need to know phone numbers today.
No.
Okay. So that's the first kind of category to understand, is that our brain prioritizes information based on what it needs to remember. This is why, I can't remember his name. The winningest person in Jeopardy history has talked about this. I can't remember his name, but he talked about how trivia has become increasingly.
It's the guy that's hosting it right now too, right?
I believe so.
It's the same guy that's hosting.
He's talked about how trivia has become increasingly less common, because with the advent of the internet, you don't really need to remember trivia. It's just like you just look it up on your phone. How I Met Your Mother did a bit on this too, where they talked about how like before smartphones, they'd spend all night at the bar debating what the most commonly eaten food in America is, and then like at the bar now, they're just like all on their phones, and like someone's like, it's bread, right? Yeah. So like we don't need to use our brains the same way when we have that information accessible.
Agreed. It
becomes a second brain for us. Some people say it's a bad thing. Some people say it's a good thing. I don't have
a thing.
It's a thing. Before it, there are cultures that don't have written language, but they still have oral histories, and they've done tests with these where they like sample that story. 10 years later, sample the story again, and it's word for word the same. Which is interesting because sociologists also know that the more you remember an event,
the more it can change.
Actually.
Yeah.
The more often you remember something that happened, the less accurately you remember it.
Correct.
So why is it that these oral traditions don't?
Yeah, and that was going to just add to like the beginning of oral traditions probably start with an eyewitness account. So written traditions still go back to an eyewitness account.
Yeah. So, well, let me keep going here.
Yep.
It also has to do with attention spans and forms of entertainment. We've talked before in the past about the bingeability of a TV show. That's something that didn't exist when we were kids. Wasn't even something that the concept didn't exist.
Yeah.
And so that changes the way shows are made, right? It affects the way the medium is handled. In a culture where you have no form of entertainment except for the old guy that tells stories, and he teaches other people those stories, the fact that the story is told correctly becomes crucial. Now, there are certain stories that within a culture, different subcultures in that culture will have slight variations of it, and that comes to the Rashomon effect. They're all remembering the same event slightly differently.
Right.
And it could be that they all have different eyewitness testimonies that told them the first version.
Affected them differently,
right.
too.
But in these cultures with oral histories, and this is something that atheists say as a criticism of the Old Testament, but that secular anthropologists acknowledge isn't really a problem for the Old Testament. It's not really a problem because we don't have in our current world, we don't have the same emphasis on oral history that they did. And so we don't treat it with the same emphasis and delicacy. Now, eyewitness testimony, because the more often you remember something, you remember it incorrectly. There's that. So eyewitness testimony is flawed, but that brings us to the New Testament. Some atheists or biblical textual critics is the term, look at the gospel accounts. There's 4 gospels, and they're not the same. A little bit different. Mm-hmm. Some people look at that and say, well, if it's the same story they're telling, it should all be the same. Other people point out, well, if they were all the same, you'd only need one, first of all. Second of all, and this a police officer said this to me first, and it stuck.
Were you under arrest?
Not at the time.
Okay.
He said that the fact that the 4 testimonies, the 4 gospels are different, tells him it's true. When he's investigating an incident, if all 4 people tell him the exact same story, he knows that at least 3 of them are lying, and they've agreed on what their story is going to be beforehand. Because people aren't going to remember things the same. They're all going to have different emphasis. They're all going to be prioritizing different information, trying to communicate something different, and or sometimes being dishonest, which is what we see in Rashomon. So I don't think so. First of all, I think oral history, eyewitness testimony, separate categories. But secondly, I don't think it's a problem for the scripture. I think it actually reinforces.
Well, I'm going to give it up anyways. Faith, that is, yeah.
Mhm.
Just seems like,
For Lent.
yeah. No, yeah.
Now, also, interestingly, because we talked about how is this similar to Star Wars, what might have been the influence on George Lucas here? I do think Star Wars has a narrative technique that some people credit to George Lucas as being like part of his brilliance as a writer. I think it's that he's a lazy writer, and this is kind of like a retrofit. But he likes to use untrustworthy narrators. So the classic example is Obi-Wan telling Luke that Darth Vader killed his father, and then you find out no, Darth Vader is his father. And the ghost of Obi-Wan's like, well, it is true from a certain point of view. It's like, no, dude, you lied, right? And so I think that that's probably the closest we could get to like how this movie specifically might have influenced George Lucas with a untrustworthy narrator or a flawed narrator. But I think that's about it.
We don't ever find out who's the most accurate in this film.
No.
It leaves it up for you to decide, which is another thing that I appreciate. Movies like this, ideas like this, story structures like this, I appreciate it when they give you everything that they know.
Yeah.
And say, you got to make up your mind. Like, I appreciate that. Like, Inception does that at the end with the top.
Yeah.
When that top's spinning and you see it wobble and then the credits roll. Like,
12 Angry Men does it.
Yep. Correct. Yep. Like, I appreciate, not every movie can do that.
No.
You know, like,
it also would get tired if
Right.
every movie did that.
yeah, like if the Lincoln movie ended right before you hear the gunshot, or blacked out as you hear a gunshot and you go, wait, did he or didn't
Did he die?
Like the
Abraham Lincoln didn't kill himself, Jeff.
I was gonna make a was that one guy joke?
Epstein?
Epstein was gonna make it. They're both hanging out. But yeah, no, I appreciate the way the ending was what's the word? It was
Ambiguous.
There it is.
Yeah.
Some of a video I watched about this film talked about how like you get minimal characters in this film. A lot of them are used in different ways. But the I'll give the video to Nelson's to link below. But talking about how like, and we've seen this in other films, like the setting is sometimes the character.
Yeah.
And in this one, the setting of the woods was very much a character. And the way the sun played its part, like the sun being in the eyes of some of the characters to keep them from seeing some details or showing them details and stuff. Like, I really appreciated a lot of some of the directorial cinematic takes on the way the setting, as simple as it was, it's like this movie was not lavish at all, but as simple as the settings were, I liked how the settings were also characters and they had their own part in it more so than some films.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's I thought it was really interesting what each character chose to lie about. The bandit lied to make himself more of a chauvinist. The spirit medium version of the samurai who died lied to make himself a greater warrior. And then the lady lied to make herself less of just a really awful person. They all lied to make themselves less awful people. Let's talk about the woodcutter doesn't intervene. He has a weapon. He's got an axe. There's a samurai. There's a bandit. They both have swords. There's a woman with a dagger. He doesn't intervene. He watches a man be tied up, his wife raped before his eyes, and then the two of them fight and run off. He doesn't intervene. Now, we've talked about, like, I don't think that our show almost has a meta, right? Like, because we've talked several times now about when is it proper
to intervene.
I understand your reservations about intervention.
This would have been one where I would have intervened. Like, clearly something bad's happening.
Yeah.
Like, I would have, yeah. There was no mystery to the negative effects on this situation.
Yeah.
And
I recently read the story of Esther to my boys. Well, a truncated version of it that made it a little bit more.
Esther, that's Joey Tribbiani's agent in Friends. That story.
And
No, that's Estelle.
her
Sorry.
uncle says to her, "Perhaps God put you here for a time such as this." And that's the closest thing we get in that whole book to God interacting with the story, which is very uncommon for scripture. And it makes it, that's part of why I intervene on things. It's like, perhaps God put me here for a time such as this. And if he didn't, he'll work things out the way he's going to work things out. But if he did, I have a responsibility to act. I think both of us can agree that in the case of sexual violence, we had, like, especially in this one, when he's violating her, you can sneak up on him with an axe.
Yeah, there's some vulnerable moments there.
Yeah. And the woodcutter, in his own words, did nothing.
I would have done some wood cutting of my own. You get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, you pee-pee chop.
Pee-pee chop. Good old pee-pee chop. I just want to keep saying pee-pee chop.
It's the oldest karate move.
No, not the pee-pee chop. Anything but the pee-pee chop.
Please, Buddha's palm or something.
That's the threat that Lindsay uses the most. You don't do that, I'm going to put your penis in a jar.
Really?
Yeah, like.
I thought you were going to say, if you don't do that, pee-pee chop.
Pee-pee. Well, she should start instituting that.
Start that.
Yeah, definitely.
Lindsay, if you're listening to this, and we know you're not, start threatening Jeff with a pee-pee chop.
Anywho. But yeah, like, I would, intervening in this situation was definitely a no-brainer.
Yeah.
For us.
So what do you think of
for them.
What do you think of the woodcutter?
Nice arms. Skips leg day a couple times. I think too many. No, too cautious.
Yeah.
Maybe cowardice. Yeah, I would just no backbone. I mean, I would use those words.
Yeah.
So to see something happening, not just the potential of something to happen, but to see something happening, and you're not restrained, you're not being held back. You have the full ability to intervene. Coward.
Yeah. Let's say that you're in his position.
Okay.
Do you
squat here? Hold on.
come out of the woods and threaten the bandit?
Are we out of the woods?
Do you threaten the bandit, or do you just attack?
If he's already in the middle of physical violence,
Let's assume that that's what's happening.
attack.
Yeah. Just bury an axe right in his back. He doesn't need a warning.
I would go for the Achilles tendons.
I would go for the pee-pee chop.
Pee-pee chop, yeah. Trademarked. It's going to be our next t-shirt.
Pee-pee chop.
Pee-pee chop.
It's just a picture of the woodcutter from Rashomon. It says pee-pee chop.
Pee-pee chop. It's our version of Bible Man.
Pee-pee chop
Pee-pee
man.
chop man.
He fights kaijus.
Yeah. No, I just do anything to get him off of her.
Gross.
And then restrain him. If not, like I don't, even in that situation, if I had the ability to not kill versus just harm or like just immobilize, I'm going to like to not take a life. Like, again, like if taking a life is the only option, like to kill him is the only option to stop this act of violence.
Yeah.
I hope I had
Also-
that ability. Like, but in general, like if I had the ability just to immobilize and stop him without taking a life, because like I just don't want that on me. Whether it's a villain or someone that's misunderstood or a good guy, I don't want to take a life.
Honestly, the
Or girl. Good girl.
So
Villainess.
the woodchopper, at this point in the story, if he's already violating her, the woodcutter has watched him overpower a samurai. So I don't think it makes sense to try and preserve his life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the reasonable thing to do there is you're going to have to kill this guy. You're going to have to at least seriously injure him because you don't stand a chance against him. That said,
do they have guns?
Oh, they should have just drawn their guns.
They just use guns.
Should have used guns.
ARs, assault rifles.
Assault rifle 15.
Sorry. If this is the first time you're listening to our episode, you're missing out.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
So
listen to more.
The woodcutter at this point has already missed an opportunity to intervene, which is when the bandit ran off to get the girl and bring her back, he could have freed the samurai who was just tied to a tree. You have an axe, cut those ropes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no hero in these stories. Like, I mean, I guess, would you disagree?
Here.
Is there a hero in this story? Does someone come out?
Nobody named
like,
hero.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jimbo.
Yo, Jimbo.
But yeah, it's just the actual story plot of this film is very disheartening
Yeah.
and frustrating. And then it's just equivalent. It's the equivalent of three guys at a bar drinking a beer talking about how they saw the same train wreck down the road.
No.
Like it's-
No.
You don't think it's
I don't think so.
okay?
Because the priest and the woodcutter both are pretty traumatized by the whole event.
Well, traumatized people go to bars.
No.
No,
Every person I've met in a bar is
Not
super
no-
emotionally mature.
no trauma.
No trauma whatsoever.
I'm going to the wrong bars.
All right. The guy that's kind of into it's tough. I don't know his name. The guy that is asking the priest and the woodcutter to tell their story and then steals the clothes later.
He's a beggar. The beggar.
Okay, let's call him the beggar. The beggar says most of the time we can't even be honest with ourselves. Because he said all men are liars. Most of the time we can't even be honest with ourselves. I thought that was a very prescient line. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think I could argue it much.
Yeah.
Whether intentionally, preconceived or just accidentally, yeah. Like I probably lie at least once a day.
Yeah.
And that's me being modest.
Sure.
Like it's in our sin nature to try to save ourselves, protect ourselves, save our pride. So yeah, I would say
And sometimes
it's
there's been times where I'm editing the podcast and I'm like, the thing you just said, Nelson, isn't right. And you must have known in the moment that wasn't true. So.
I'd like all those examples, please. No, but I just
No,
it's like
they don't exist.
I do,
but it's always petty stuff.
What was the second
it's petty
part
stuff? Here's an example: Spider-Man: Far From Home. I haven't seen Amazing Spider-Man 2.
You've never watched this?
I have now.
Oh, okay.
But at the time I said I had. Why did I lie about that? I had nothing to gain from lying about that.
Are you really a libertarian?
I'm actually a communist.
What was the second part of that line he says?
Most of the time, we can't even be honest with ourselves.
That's the reason I'm in therapy, Nels. For me, that's the line that hits home a lot. It's not the lying part, but it's just the idea of I don't want to acknowledge the things that I know that are happening. But if I just, even in my head or even just saying it out loud, if I don't acknowledge it, then it's not a lie, but it's not me
being honest with yourself.
Being honest, right. It's I'm avoiding the truth. It's for me, that's a big thing I do. I just kind of set it and forget it type of thing. If we just don't talk about this again, I won't have to worry about it. It won't come up. There's no way it'll come back up again. And so for me, that's the part of the line that I'm very much, whether it's a lie, whether it's any other sort of thing, I have a hard time being honest with myself sometimes.
Yeah.
Or I try to say that I'm being too honest with myself, and I know I'm just either overcompensating or just self-deprecating to just try to move on from something. Maybe defaulting or taking blame and then moving on rather than no, let's actually dig into this. So, sorry, here's Jeff's therapy in a nutshell.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just there in a nutshell. My favorite miming joke is pretending to be in a nutshell. I'm in a nutshell.
Are you making fun of me?
No, I'm making fun of therapy.
Oh,
I think.
Yeah, it's dumb. Don't ever get therapy.
The wife says in retelling the story from her point of view that she saw in her husband's eyes it wasn't anger or sorrow, it was contempt for me. Do you think that it is common for men in the horrific situation in which sexual violence happened to a woman in your life? Do you think it would be a natural response to have contempt?
Explain to me what contempt is.
Negative feelings toward, holding a grudge.
Okay. Towards my wife, the victim?
Yeah. I'm not saying is it logical, I'm saying is it natural? And we also have to keep in the context of the film that nobody claimed she resisted entirely.
Right.
Not even her.
If we're talking the aspect of rape, and we're talking about it being spouse, I would, this is all hypothetical.
Yeah.
I would like to say I wouldn't have contempt, but I probably would have some sort of
some mixed hard feelings.
Obviously I'm going to want to be there for her. I'm going to want to console her. I'm going to want to protect her. I want to make sure she gets help. But at the same time, it's not going to be contempt, but it's going to be more I'm probably going to have the feeling of something's been done to you that's kind of put something between us. She didn't do it. So it's not a grudge, but it's more of like there's a 500-pound elephant in the room now that's going to be hard for me to get over for us to be back to where we were before the trauma happened. I don't think it's going to be a grudge. Like, I'm not going to hold a grudge on someone who had nothing to do with the fact that she was hurt.
Yeah.
I can't, like, I can't imagine a concept where that would make sense. But I'm not saying I wouldn't have hard feelings about a situation and go like,
and the feelings
we're
aren't
not
to
where
her.
we were before because something's between us.
And the
now.
feelings aren't to her.
No, it's to the action that was done to her.
And it
but
just
it's
complicates all the emotions.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think I would describe them as contempt or grudge. But like, there would definitely be something there that we've got to work through.
And also for her part, if in the situation of sexual violence, she's going to have some walls up.
Intimacy issues. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for good reason.
Right. So yeah, I don't know if I'd use the word contempt. I don't see how that makes sense. Unless it's, and okay, hypothetical, unless you know she's going out and she's looking for something, but then that something turns into something more than what she bargained for.
Sure.
And then it does turn negative.
Yeah.
There would be some different context of that of like, well, you shouldn't have been going out looking for it.
Right.
Like, it's like, I guess it's in the story, like, it's really weird to think about this.
While victim blaming is gross, there is a point to which
there's some ownership that may or may not need to take place depending on the choices made.
Yeah. Did you exhibit behaviors that put you in the situation?
Were you somewhere exhibiting options for people?
Yeah, and this goes for men too, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Men put themselves in stupid situations all the time.
Or did someone break into your house? It immediately, all by shock, you don't know the person. Like that's going to be a different type of reaction, trauma, ground rebuilding of structure than it would be if like, well, you were doing this with this. You don't like. There's going to be some different feelings.
Sure.
So, man, it's a weird place.
Yeah. She has a weapon. She has a dagger.
And
I think that
her mouth.
Given the situation,
that girl got a mouth on her.
Given the situation, given the era that firearms don't really exist, I think for her to have a dagger is a very sensible self-defense item.
Mm-hmm.
You can do a lot of damage with a small knife.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that this movie kind of highlights and emphasizes the importance of women having an option for self-defense. It didn't prevent what happened, but it did delay it.
Yeah.
And very well could have prevented it.
Yeah. I agree. Whether it's any form of like taekwondo, jujitsu, some sort of like self-defense maneuvers, or if it's mace, pepper spray, those handbag guns, or like those 22 like concealed guns in their person. So like,
I recently rewatched Iron Man 2, and Happy refers to it as Booty Boot Camp.
Booty Camp. There's a reason they call him Happy.
All women try to deceive men with their tears. Now, obviously, you and I have a bit of a knee-jerk reaction whenever somebody says all, always, never, no one.
Yeah.
Do you think
that's an absolute?
Right.
Yeah.
Let's remove the absolute from it. And
so some?
And well, let's maintain the chauvinism of it.
Okay.
Most will say, or many women. Do you think that this is a fair statement that women have a tendency more than men to try to deceive people with tears?
No, I don't think that's fair.
Who do you think is more likely to try and deceive you with emotion, a man or a woman?
I'll be honest, I have a hard time not saying it's equal. So I don't cry often, but I have an ability. I don't have a hard time tapping into other people's emotions and becoming kind of jiving with emotions of other people and kind of getting to their level or bringing them to my level. It's like, I wouldn't say it's manipulation, but like I'm pretty good at invoking emotion on people.
Yeah.
Or making it mutual or like bringing, like, I went through a season earlier on, when like of being a pretty down and out type of guy for a while Lindsay and I were going through some of our infertility stuff. Like, and there was a season where like, it wouldn't take much for me to go and then bring kind of the house down as far as emotionally. It's like, I think we all have the ability. I don't want to stand here and say women do it more. I'm not going to say that. Like, I'm not. Because just I have 4 sisters, and I'm probably more dramatic than some of my sisters.
Okay.
And so, from my personal perspective, I'm probably more emotionally manipulative than most of the people in my life.
You think so?
I'm very dramatic. Nelson, you've known me for a while.
I wouldn't say you're emotionally manipulative, or maybe I'm just too autistic to notice.
I'm using that word in the extreme sense.
The ultimate foil to an emotionally
But
manipulative.
like, if I had
person
the
is an
ability
autist.
to cry when I get pulled over in hopes that he would get me pulled, I would absolutely probably do it. Whereas Lindsay, she'd be like, "No, sir, what did I do? Okay, lay it on me." Like, Lindsay's very good at owning. Not that she does it often. She's very, like, she's a great lady. But like,
I'm a fan.
I think I would easily be trying to get out of a ticket more than she would. She would own something a lot more if ownership is required. Like, I don't know. It's like I have a hard time putting a gender percentage on one of those things just because of my personality.
Yeah.
I would
think-
say what's convicted and portrayed throughout Hollywood and social media and movies and TV and that
literature.
It's a lot of women getting out of parking tickets and crying and I say this with respect, but like you see this portrayed in films, like showing a little clavicle to like, "Oh, sorry, officer, I didn't know." Like you see it portrayed more as women getting out of something with their bodies and emotions. I would say it's portrayed more. I wouldn't say in real life that it's that separated. Like, I wouldn't say it's 90-10
I don't think
in
that,
real life, but like
I
in
don't
movies,
think
I'd say it's
that-
more 90-10.
I don't think women are any more likely to be dishonest than men. Like, okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I do think, though, when being dishonest, women are more likely to leverage emotion and tears as part of that deception.
Okay. I mean, I think they have the ability to authentically and maybe inauthentically access tears quicker than us.
Right.
Like, it's like, I guess with
It's a weapon in their deception arsenal that men don't have.
Right.
It's not that they're any more likely to be dishonest,
Right.
but they're more likely to use that as part of the dishonesty. To my wife's credit, I'm pretty aloof when people start crying. Like, I don't care that you're crying. It doesn't change the way I feel about the situation. And to my wife's credit, I can't think of a time where she's tried to manipulate me with tears. It's something that I have kind of no tolerance for and doesn't really work on me anyway. But like I said, it might not be that I don't consider that a virtue of mine. I think it's an emotional stunting of mine, you know? It's probably a lack of what's the word? A lack of empathy on my part.
I'd agree with that. I think women are more in tune with their emotions. I would say that that's statistically more accurate. But to say that they're more deceptive,
Absolutely not.
no,
Yeah. But also, you know, the man that says all women try to deceive men with their tears was the same man that said all men lie. Most of the time, we can't even be honest with ourselves.
Right.
So he's already started from the principle of everyone's dishonest.
Right.
So when he says this, it's really more specific to how women are dishonest than that women are dishonest.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of accurate. Again, on the margins, there's going to be women that are less emotional than some men, and vice versa. But
Right.
on the net, I think it's pretty accurate. That woman says, "A woman loves a man who loves passionately. A man who has to make a woman his by his sword." And I was watching this dubbed and subbed, and the dubs and subs didn't line up.
They didn't line up. Yeah.
And so I got 2 different translations of what was being said there. And this was a euphemism. When she says
euphemism or a euphemism?
when she says a man has to make a woman his by his sword, the sword here is a euphemism for
Pee-pee chop?
pee-pee chop.
Pee-pee chop.
And this is what she says to the bandit before she implores him to fight her husband. I'm sure women like this exist, and I'm glad my wife's not one of them that expects me to dominate her. I know when we were watching Gone with the Wind, we talked about that with Scarlett O'Hara. Once she was dominated by Rhett. Once she was
Ray Palpatine.
Yeah, Ray Palpatine. Once she was dominated by Rhett, her emotions for him grew significantly. I'm sure these women exist, and whether it's antisocial behavior or unprocessed trauma or whatever you want to call it, there's a plethora of reasons, and some of it might just be preference. You know, people can prefer strange things that we find abhorrent. But that line stuck out to me, that this is a woman that wants to be mistreated. Her husband is treating her well. Her husband's treating her like a princess, as we saw, and she resents him for it.
Yeah. She has her own demons.
Yeah.
Sure. I was just going for a reaction. Yeah, no, that's... Yeah. Yeah, I got no more to say on that.
This next one. Do you have more? Do you have something you want to bring up?
I don't have many on this. It was the big... Essentially just putting the Rashomon effect into different situations.
Do you have more applications that you'd like to explore for that?
I will. Give me one more. Let me give me.
I got two more.
Okay.
So the next one is, someone is bound to come along and take it. What's wrong with me doing it first? That's what the beggar said when he stole the clothes from the abandoned child.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mentioned earlier that this movie is based on 2 short stories. The second short story, so there's In a Grove, which is also In a Bamboo Grove. That is the plot of the movie, but there's a second short story called Rashomon, which is takes place at the Rashomon Gates. I'm going to read the full plot summary because it's quite short. The story recounts the encounter between a servant and an old woman in the dilapidated Rashomon, the southern gate of the then ruined city of Kyoto, where unclaimed corpses were sometimes dumped. The current name of the gate in the story, but not the plot, comes from the No play Rashomon. The man, a lowly servant recently fired, is contemplating whether to starve to death or to become a thief, to survive in the barren times. He goes upstairs after noticing some firelight there, and encounters a woman who is stealing hair from the dead bodies on the 2nd floor. He is disgusted and decides that he would rather take the path of righteousness, even if it meant starvation. He is furious with the woman. But the old woman tells him that she steals hair to make wigs so she can survive. In addition, the woman who she is currently robbing cheated people in her life by selling snake meat and claiming it was fish. The old woman says that this was not wrong because it allowed the woman to survive. And so in turn, this entitles her to steal from the dead person, because if she doesn't, she too will starve. The man responds, "You won't blame me then for taking your clothes. That's what I have to do to keep from starving to death." He then brutally robs the woman of her robe and disappears into the night. So in that way, this movie kind of takes the 2 different short stories, mashes them together, because now we have the commoner finds an abandoned child and says, I'm going to take these clothes, and someone is bound to come along and take it. What's wrong with me doing it first? And then this becomes a conversation where the woodcutter is exposed for having stolen the dagger, because someone's bound to take it. Why not I take it? I thought that this was a really interesting moral quandary. As we've talked about before in past episodes, there was a time where I used self-checkout and it spat out like way too much money. More money than I'd put in. And I kept it. Obviously what I did was wrong.
That's why you bought that Camaro. That makes sense.
Obviously what I did was wrong. But I did it. And it was the same kind of sense of, well, if I didn't, the next guy would, and no one's going to notice, and blah, blah, blah. I think it's really interesting. This kind of goes back to most of the time we can't even be honest with ourselves. If that beggar were honest with himself, it's not right. And just because somebody else is bound to do it doesn't make it right for me to do it now.
And we tend to, it's not even that we're in denial of the weight of it. It's like we tend to actually, this isn't my fault. Yeah. Someone didn't fix the machine right, or someone it's like this doesn't fall on me, so I'm not to blame if I got an extra $5 bill or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's we tend to justify, not just deny the fact that this is wrong or right. It's just like, oh well, they shouldn't have let this in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a very easy trap that I fall into.
It's easy justification.
Yeah.
And then this is a line that I think is going to hit close to home for both of us. In talking about the abandoned child, someone said they had their fun and then they threw out the kid. I struggle with this a lot. And even in the time, I don't know what the Japanese culture's opinion of abortion at the time was. I don't know how acceptable it was. But
all the time you spent in Japan, that never came up.
Never came up. Not even once. You and I have an opinion of abortion that it is equivalent to ending life at any stage, even post-birth. But there is something to be said about the emotion of it does change once it's like even abortionists agree that once it's exited the birth canal, it has personhood.
Well, I've even heard of like places like Planned Parenthood and other places like they try to avoid. They would rather you make the decision before you hear the heartbeat.
Yes,
Even just hearing something of that, like no,
makes it real.
Don't listen to it because then you're going to want to keep it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which, if they're really providing a service for women that where abortion is not the priority, then they shouldn't actually care whether or not you hear the heartbeat or not.
Right.
Like it would strike me as something that they would be indifferent about.
Yeah.
If they are doing what they say they're doing. But coming back to like even like I know people that disagree with me on abortion, and I haven't had a single conversation where they think that this would be justified. Just abandoning an infant at the gate.
This may be an irrational statement, but I'm going to say it just because it's on my mind, and we can break it down afterwards like we normally do. That situation played out in my head the same way I feel like about how, and this is not a male versus female thing, but like this is a task that can only be done by the female.
Yeah.
Obviously, sometimes we do know like they can be coerced by Kurt Russell. Like they can be, what's the word I'm trying to say? Coerced by guys. They could be manipulated. Like they may not be doing it potentially by their own free will, but like that line that you said about the baby from the movie, like, resounds with me the same way I feel like about a woman taking the morning after pill.
Mm-hmm.
Like just thinking that sex and
they had their fun.
2 minutes or 2 hours of fun is just fun. Babies and STDs and contraceptives and periods and all that stuff prove that sex is more than just fun. All of that, sex is not a thing just for us to get pleasure. And and all that proves that. So if you're having sex and then you have to do stuff afterwards to take care of what you did the night before because things have been done, like that should tell you that there's more weight to the thing you did last night than how seriously you're taking it.
Yes.
Again, that's not just a female thing. Like that's not a critique on the female. Like I know men are
this
always
is
like
a cultural thing,
right? Like it's not a gender thing. Like, but just like I struggle with that.
Unfortunately,
Like,
women bear the burden of the responsibility.
Correct.
Not just of choosing to keep the child, which I think is the only moral choice.
Right.
But they also bear the burden of the moral weight afterwards.
Yeah.
If they chose not to.
Yeah.
And
so an abandoned baby I see as reckless as someone going, oh, that was fun. I gotta go take my pills now so I can prevent any life from happening because I want it to just be fun. I don't want these moment of intimacy, this heaviness between two people. I don't want it to be more than just fun. Yeah. And that takes away the godly biblical design of what that was meant to be.
Yeah.
It's like, so whether it's preconception or postconception,
and even if you don't agree with Jeff and my priors that there is a God who loves you and wants a relationship with you and designed sex with a purpose, if you think that we are just evolved beings, where in nature do we see animals with using birth control? And like, I'm not saying they can't use birth control, but we don't really see.
I mean, we spay and neuter our pets.
That's not in nature.
So that's true. I guess it doesn't naturally happen,
right?
But I guess we're
I would argue that we are not merely evolved apes, right?
Right. Oh, no.
Because we exhibit types of intelligence that animals don't share. Some evolutionary biologists theorize that it could be a result of use of psychedelics in early apes, maybe. But the point is that we don't see abortions in nature.
Yeah. And
so if you want to even make the naturalist claim and say that our religious virtues don't apply here because you're an atheist, well, okay, then where do you see in nature? Where do you see that in nature? And there might, it's possible that there are edge case situations in nature that I'm currently unaware of.
Yeah.
But we when we make decisions about what's natural, we don't look at the edge cases. We look at the average.
Yeah.
We look at the norm.
Majority, And I've never been a female that's been
harmed. I heard.
harmed and then had to deal with the aftermath. So let's, and then like there is a level of emotion to that I can't relate to,
Yes.
of now having to bear this life that happened to you in a forceful, traumatic way.
Yes.
And every day that reminder is not a positive one for that woman.
Sure.
Like I've not experienced that.
Yeah.
So I'm not, but like at the same time, abortion or keeping the child are not the only two options.
Sure.
And so for me, it's
And
just
also,
like, for it to be that ultimatum of like, you've got to keep the baby or you've got to get rid of it. No, there's more options.
yes.
Like,
And also,
no one's asking
and-
anyone to keep a child that they don't want, but no one's also asking you, except for Planned Parenthood, to kill a baby.
and more than that, an abortion following sexual violence does not fix the problem.
No,
It only creates a new problem, and it punishes someone who had no
Nothing.
responsibility in the
Right.
situation.
you're not going to get a clean bill of health just because you terminate the product that came from a trauma-induced situation.
Yes. The life that resulted.
Yeah, and I
Let's get
hate
off.
that these decisions exist.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrifying.
It disgusts me that there are people that would have you believe that anyone has the right to choose for another, whether they live or die. It just goes against everything like all my fundamental biases. You had some more examples of Rashomon effect that you wanted to cover before we get into rapid questions.
Other one I had was this movie, and this is a lot less detrimental, but just we talked about like how faith in scripture, faith in like generational storytelling and stuff like, but now a different type of faith, like faith in humanity.
Yeah.
This movie presents the option that we can all experience the same thing and share the story completely different, whether it's from, I mean, I'm not going to retell the story, but talk about like, so there's this idea of faith that's also given a harsh realization in this fact that like, can we even trust humanity around us?
Mm.
Can we trust just anyone that's telling us something, or like, oh yeah, I was at 9/11, but were you like,
You're 14.
like just like, and again, this is a lot less, but just this idea of like, even talking to people who have been in situations, how much validity should we put in the stories people are telling us about situations that they've experienced? Like our whole podcast is based on your and I's experience in life and how we've related to the movie we watched. How many things have you and I said in these last 60 some episodes that now like I'm going back going, okay, did I share that story correctly? Did I miss a detail? Did I like kind of like you mentioned, it's just, so there's this idea of like our faith in humanity as far as like what we're sharing with the existence of the other people around us. Like it just kind of makes you second guess like, but did you go buy milk today? Did you really go to Bueller's today? Like that was your perspective, but I saw like, just like, I know that's a dumb example, but like, it's just that idea of like, if all storytelling is going to have faults in it now,
Yeah.
what do we believe?
So I choose to take people at their word until they've given me repeated reason not to. I also hold no grudge for people embellishing a story. I think stories deserve embellishment and are often better for it. A witness testimony in a criminal trial, very different thing.
Don't embellish those.
Don't embellish those stories. And that's the context here. But don't embellish those stories. But like if you're telling a story between buddies, yeah, embellish that story. It's going to make it a better story. But that's different from dishonesty. And I have very little patience for dishonesty. And
Yeah, you look great today, man.
thanks, man.
Yeah.
And once somebody has been dishonest, provably dishonest with me, and I call them on it, if I don't get an apology, we don't have a whole lot more to talk about.
Right.
Because that's a big one for me. If you can't be honest with me, I don't see.
Yeah. And outside of pride, what did those people that were sharing those different versions of the story have to gain? Like, what did they gain after sharing that story from their perspective that's maybe been embellished or maybe been incorrectly told? What do they gain after that moment? Like,
all of them are protecting what they perceive their reputation to be, or what they want their reputation
pride.
to be.
Like, so
yeah.
this movie
It's just
falls
pride.
on pride.
Yeah.
So this is like Lion King.
Yeah.
Very similar to Lion King.
Except
The
it would
movie
be
was about
Pride Forest instead of Pride Rock.
Pride.
Maybe Pride Stump.
Pride Stump. Pee-pee chop.
Pee-pee chop. Pride Stump.
Yeah. That's
It's
what you
pe-
get after you get a pee-pee chop. Is a pride stump.
Those braids are going to be looking different this year.
There's like a Ken doll down there. Oh gosh, sorry everybody. But yeah, so that was just the other thing. It's like this movie, and I think this was the design of it, is just to kind of give you like the don't trust everything you hear. And there was just a couple of examples of like, my mom told me some stories about when she was a kid. What facts did she get right and what facts did she get wrong? Just questioning these things that you hear growing up.
Yeah.
Like, my mom's not going to lie to me, but
She may be mistaken.
unintentionally. Which details have now changed as she's gotten older and lived life longer? Like,
Or, for entirely good reasons, she may have omitted details that weren't appropriate for the audience.
Yeah.
And then over time, from telling it that way, has forgotten those details.
Yeah.
Right? Like these things happen
that's
in entirely not deceptive ways as well.
Well, they can't. They can't.
No. Every single time
It's not deceptive.
it's not deceptive.
You look really good today, Nelson.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, for real though.
Wearing the same thing I wore last night.
Yeah, checks out.
Anything else?
Those are all the big things I had.
That's all I had.
This was fun.
I like this movie.
Well, hold on. I didn't ask you yet.
You did.
Oh, it's traded. Yeah. Would you recommend this film?
I would. I don't think that I need to see more Akira Kurosawa. I don't think that this is the one that I'd be like, start here. It just happened to be where we started.
Right that's the only one. That's the only one you can recommend.
It's the only one I can recommend.
Experience.
So I doubt that I'd be like, hey, this is where you should start with him. What and as we see more, that might change.
Yeah.
But I like it.
Yeah. This is one of those ones that I would recommend from a watch it for what it was and what it tells. But this type of story has been redone and modernized to get the same concepts across.
Do you think it's done better by them?
I don't know. I need to see Vantage Point again.
Cassie Sinchuk just reviewed this on Letterboxd. She gave it 1 star.
She just reviewed it?
She just reviewed Rashomon, gave it 1 star.
I wonder...
Because she's probably saw the post, hey, what do you think about it?
That's right. That's right.
Let me go pull up Patreon and see if she voted in that poll yet. I believe she has voted because it is now tilted in the favor against putting this in your top 250. So there you go.
She's great.
Cassie, your involvement in our show is always appreciated.
I'm trying to.
I just pulled it up on Letterboxd because I wanted to see what I had given it. You gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars.
And I was getting to that reason here in a second. I'm looking up something here.
Our Letterboxd accounts are linked below if you'd like to take a look. I gave it 4 out of 5.
One of them is Grease, like just specifically the part in the movie Grease.
Oh, the opening scene
where Sandy and Danny are retelling their events from the summer.
Yeah,
and it's completely different. So yeah.
Pulp Fiction, which we've not seen, will have that.
Also, the same guy from Grease, right?
He is in it.
Yeah, what's his name? I can't think of his name.
Travolta. John
Travolta. Well, The Last Jedi does this with the retelling of Kylo Ren's fall to darkness between the two characters. So there's
Knives
moments.
Out does it.
The Last Duel.
Yeah.
Which is, I believe, something.
Vantage Point is listed here.
Yeah. So just I think the concept, whether in like small moments of the movie or the whole movie, has been done. Like, and this isn't one that I'm gonna be like, I don't know if it retells the situation the best.
Yeah.
But it does tell it in a cool way. It's like I gave it a 7 because like I thought it was great for what it did.
Sure.
But it's as far as entertainment goes, I wasn't necessarily entertained.
Okay.
I wasn't movied by this movie. I was almost educated by it.
Interesting.
In the art of filmmaking from the 50s.
Okay,
but as far as watching it for entertainment, I wouldn't watch this for entertainment. I did enjoy it, though.
I enjoyed it. I won't be watching it again soon. I think I would recommend it. And I gave it a 4 out of 5, so it probably will end up being easily my top 250. What about you? Top 250?
Oh, you're good.
You gave it 3.5 out of 5, so that's like it's probably going to work out that way.
It'll work out to probably the bottom of my top 250.
Yeah.
It's definitely in the top half right now of my films.
Yeah.
So we answered that question. Would you change the rating? Not rated?
I would continue to not rate it.
I would probably go PG-13.
Yeah, I think
it does deal with rape.
I think Well, it handles it quite delicately.
Right, but it's still rape.
I think you could get away with PG, but I do think that this is more appropriate for PG-13.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't want anyone under 13 just stumbling upon a movie about rape without like, I don't know, like it comes down to parental guidance.
Yep.
But like, just in general, like, I'm trying to think, maybe TVY7, you know, at least TVY7, definitely not PG. So I would definitely change the rating. I think between TVY7 or PG-13
Sure.
is where I would throw it. Maybe a PG-10, if that's a thing. But has it aged well? 1950. So we're looking 50, 70, 74 years old.
I think it's aged incredibly well.
It looks really good.
It's beautifully shot, very crisp.
Yeah, there's some cool shots in it.
And because it's a period piece, it gets away with some things that like would like we our classic, is it a time capsule or period piece, right?
Yeah.
In this case, very much a period piece, and I think it's aged well because of it.
Yeah. I mean, came out in the 50s.
Yep.
This movie is definitely set in about that era. Because like, in one of the documents, well, maybe I'm wrong, but in one of the videos I watched, talked about how like it's post World War II.
It was filmed post World War II,
right? But like, you don't think the setting could be?
No. They're wearing very traditional. Like, the samurai.
But people still wear those today, though.
Yeah, but
like
within the context of the film, it's quite obvious that everybody wears this.
Okay, so the destruction of those buildings weren't because of
unrelated.
Well, then why? Now I want to know why
Because Kyoto wasn't bombed anyway.
Not bombed, but there was still war.
Yeah, but there's been other wars in Japan.
Prove it. No, I disagree. Okay, when I was there, I experienced this as it was. No, I'm just kidding. Let me tell you what I.
It's I'm gonna butcher this. It's a jidaigeki drama film. It's a genre of film, television, video game, and theater in Japan, literally meaning period dramas.
Okay.
They are most often set during the Edo period of Japanese history, which is 1603 to 1868. So
when was World War II?
This is the Heian period. I'm looking up on the Wikipedia article for it. Specifically, this is the Heian era of Kyoto. Heian period is the last division of the classical Japanese history, running from 794 to 1185.
Wow. They look good for their age. Okay. All right. I misunderstood that then. Like, I guess I just assumed that they were like a small village living, like just, I don't know why I thought that, but just,
yeah.
I never thought about the setting while watching it. Just, I was paying attention. Then when I saw the video, they kept talking about World War II. And I knew the movie came out in the 1950s. I just assumed that this was post-war, but it could have been post-A-war, but not the war I was thinking of. And now that I think of it, it's fairly obvious. Well, guys, I'm not perfect. Yeah. Why do you think this is in the top 250? We did these out of order.
Obviously, Akira Kurosawa is a legendary filmmaker. He's got, like a dozen different movies that have been in the top 250 total, and a handful that are currently.
There's no way of knowing.
And so that's a big part of it. It also created an entire film trope, the Rashomon effect, and it's beautifully shot. I think it tells a compelling story, a story that tells the same story several times, and each time it makes you feel something different.
Yeah.
It makes you angry at the bandit, then angry at the husband, then angry at the wife, then angry at the woodcutter as he's telling his own story, then angry at the commoner for stealing from the baby. Like, the only person in this that is in any way an altruist is the priest. I think it's a very compelling movie.
Yeah. I can't find faults in it as far as the story goes.
Yeah.
For the story that they set out to tell, they tell it really well. And I think because of that and how it has stood the test of time as far as like the values in this movie are still values that we should be aware of today.
Yeah.
I think outside of the director and it having some pretty big cast members in it from like, even just in Japan alone, like having the cast and stuff and being very under budget and assuming that it made, I don't know, maybe it didn't do well right away. But but just the impact that it's had on socioeconomics, psychology, like
criminology.
Yeah, people aren't going watch Vantage Point to learn the Rashomon effect. They're like watch Rashomon to watch
learn the Vantage Point effect.
Vantage Point. Like it's just like it does it in a way where like you think about things. You think about how it affects you. Like some movies we watch, and some movies we don't. No, some movies we watch.
Most movies we don't.
I have to find things to like. I want to talk about that. This one, the concept that was presented, I'm going, yeah, but what if it did this? Like I just naturally started doing that.
Right.
And I'm like, that's a cool storytelling tact. Like that's a cool way. That's a talent. They did it in a way where it invoked naturally critically thinking.
Yeah.
I said that in a really weird way, but you know what I meant.
Nailed
it. So yeah, I think that's the reason. And this movie may not make my top 250.
Okay.
500 movies from now.
Right.
But I think as far as the top 250 for the world, I think this movie should be on it.
Yeah.
Like it was cool.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll change that opinion in 500 movies from now, but
maybe you won't.
Yeah.
Is that it for us?
Seems that way.
What's next week, Jeff?
I don't know, but there will be blood. No, it's just there will be blood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We'll have a guest on, and it's going to be good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to happening.
Yeah. I'm looking at the cast from this movie. I've not seen this one. 2007.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Paul Dano, which my first introduction to him was the new Batman with Robert Pattinson, and he did great in that movie.
He's fun in that.
The newer-ish Batman. But I'm excited to see him.
I really like him in Swiss Army Man.
That's right. I have seen Swiss Army Man. I watched that. That's right. I need to watch that one again. I forgot he was in that. Him and Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, I need to watch that again because that movie is not fresh in my head.
Well, join us next week for There Will Be Blood.
Love you. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did.
If you have found value in what we discussed today, please consider leaving us a rating and review. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
If you have any feedback or suggestions, we would love to hear from you.
That's right. Tell us why we're wrong.
If you want even more content and ways to engage with us and each other, check out our Patreon page.
By supporting us there, you'll get access to exclusive bonus content and help us continue to create high-quality episodes, as well as help pay for our future plans. Links to our social media, merchandise, and Patreon are in the show notes.